Filled PR after PR on barbell bench with no idea what went wrong. Well, I was in that same position not too long ago, feeling uncomfortable in my form, not be able to add any weight to the bar, and just not feeling good. So that's why I spent hours studying the best benches to see what they all had in common, and that's led me to three things. In this video, I'm going to cover 3 ways that you can incorporate to your bench that'll help you with better technique, more power output, and better form. If you'd like to see that, you stick around in the video. Number 3. Number 3 is something very overlooked in most people's bench, but it's very important. It is grip. Now, grip is pretty self-explanatory. How you hold the bar in your hands. But I think of it as more than that. I think of it as how the bar goes down through your hands. Something that is very important is the relationship between your wrist to your forearms. When someone has a very straight wrist on top of forearms, you have better power output because you are in a straight line. Think of it like almost shoulder press. But when you aren't in that and you have insufficient wrist placement, that can lead to insufficient power output and lead to more stress on your wrist, which leads to worse grip. Now, also another common thing I see people are either benching too narrow or benching too wide. See, when you bench too narrow, you have too much tricep activated, and most people's chest have more strength in their triceps. Now, if you bench too wide, you might be losing out on some of that proper form and torque. So that's why I recommend that you either measure your right from here to here, or instead of that, you're always welcome to make sure whenever you're forming, you keep a 90-degree form. And I like to think of it also in the real world. Things are built of triangles, 90 degrees. And 90 degrees is very important because it really allows the most output. The strongest angle is 90 degrees. So this is the best thing for your bench that'll let you push the most overlooked out of anyone have. You're probably overlooking it right now. So I would say number 2 would be back positioning. Now, what do you mean back positioning? Why have my back on the bench anyway? No, you can be using it better. So your back should be your base. It should be your base of your bench. Now, back position can make a significant difference in increasing weight output and less fatigue. When your back is nice, stable, and your scapula is retract, you have better form. You'll be able to have a slight arch. Now, arch, you might hear arch, you're like, oh, I don't want like a powerlift arch. Well, you don't necessarily need that. A slight arch can help you on any lift, and it can also promote muscle growth and help with strength. So you might not necessarily be shortening the range of motion, just giving yourself more a stable back on the bench. That's why I recommend that if you're dealing with a really shallow bench to either put a mat down, band down. You'll see some powerlifters put chalk down. You just have to do whatever is comfortable for you. Make sure that you're enjoying what's happening with your bench. Now, one thing I would say is that when you're thinking about pushing your back into the bench, you really have to think about contracting the scapula, pushing your neck, delts, and back far into the pad. Because if you are stable in that position and your body is pushed into the bench, you have the most output out of everything. If you compared someone that benched perfectly flat on their back or someone that was using that drive through their back, the person that's using the drive will have a more stable bench. Like, instead of shaking, they'll be basically perfect. Something I've noticed in my training is over time, as I've built a better base, no matter the weight, even if it's heavy, I can keep a pretty much strict form, even if I'm struggling. So I won't shake as much, I'll just struggle with the range of motion and not be shaking with the stability, which also ties into number 2. So those are 2 very important things that you need to remember. If your back is not in the right position, you will not help yourself. And you see most powerlifters make sure their back is perfectly positioned before the lift, right in the beginning. Because if it's not, then you aren't going to have a stable lift. And a stable lift means insufficient strength is not going to the bar. You're pushing it. You're not putting it in the right places. So I hope you understand that. Now, the number 1 spot, which I think is the most important thing that I found in all great benchers, is leg drive. Now, leg drive is more than just pushing through your feet. That is very important, which we will get to how and the best way to do that. When using your legs, you have to utilize, if you are using your, like number 2, if your back is contracted, stable, pushed into it, you can use your legs to push yourself or your feet through and into the pad. And when you do that, you're almost like a slingshot. You're all that force just waiting back just to explode through the bar. And when you do that, that allows you to have more explosiveness, strength, and less fatigue dealing with insufficient form. Now, I like to use this certain type of form cue. Most people either push through their toes, their heels, But I thought about, when am I the most stable on a thing like squat? When I have all points of my foot to the ground. I like to call it tripod foot. A lot of powerlifters use it. It's when your big toe, upper sole, your uh, balls of your feet, your heel, is all perfectly pushing in place in the ground. And as I've developed better form with that in squat, but also on bench using it there, I felt way more stable, way more connected to the ground, and my back has felt so much better because, like, instead of having to force my back all contracted, if it's already pushed in to that stable base, then it doesn't make a difference. And a lot of people say, well, they use their feet. Well, you're really not. Now, because if you're not doing number two, number three means nothing. So number two directly correlates to number three. You could forget number one. You could totally forget number three. Number one and two are the most important. So that's the number one thing y'all need to be focusing on. Leg drive. Leg drive can make the biggest difference on your lift, no matter what lift it is, especially bench. So you need to focus that you are using just correct. When also deciding with your legs, you need to decide how big your arch should be, because that'll decide how far your feet are. Are they going to be very far forward, very far back, point it out, point it in? That'd be a little weird if they're pointing, but just how do you want to portray that as? And that'll actually dictate how your forms are. You bench pretty wide, you bench a little narrower, which that's okay, because not everyone has the exact same form. But these certain key elements will help your bench. So when you're thinking about that, use the feet you have. Because if you can give yourself a good base to push in, you will be like a slingshot. The weight will just get right off you. No matter if you're benching strict, bouncing it off, it will come right off. But it all starts with that stable base, so you must keep your feet in contact with the ground. Today, about a week or two ago. This is a very important, I'm benching. My PR is about 245 right now. But right here, I'm trying to use all those three key elements. So put wrist wraps on. Wrist wraps, use them, don't. If your wrists are fine, you don't need to. That's the one thing. If you use the wrist positioning right, you will not need them. I struggle with number three. So if you don't need wrist wraps, that's great, amazing. So I get out of position. You see my feet. I'm putting all full load, all contact on them. Loading my back into it. My arch is not that big because it lowers back down. Look at it. Pushing everything in. Boom. Wrist stay straight. Perfect. Easy. One rep. Nothing other than that. Good rep using all three things at the same time. Now, if you can use these. You can look better than that. Now that's on me. Now let's see it on a professional powerlifter that's doing things greater than me. Now in this video, we're going to look at Russell Orhey, who is not a world-class bencher, but he's a world-class powerlifter. He does everything correct. No bench might be his weakest lift. It is still an amazing lift to look at. So we'll go through that clip. So starting in the beginning clip, he's making sure to keep his back positioned, pushing it and down. You see the wrist positioning? Straight up and down, straight up and down. You see, there's zero movement in his feet because he is pushing through his glutes, his legs to keep his back in that perfect position so he can push the most weight. And as you see, most of y'all aren't doing this. That's the difference between a world-class bencher and just average Joe benching. Because if you can get these things right, your bench doesn't have to be a lot, but if your form can be amazing, it can make a really big difference in your progress for the future. You see, if you can fix your norm now, you could bench 135. It doesn't matter. That 135 could be the perfect 135 you've ever seen. And as you slowly move up, if your form stays the same, that is amazing. That will be great for all lifts. Practicing great form no matter what you're doing is great. Because if you don't, you're like, oh, I can bench all this weight, but my form's bad. Now instead of you're using like a program, so, oh yeah, now I can do this and getting better. No, I have to spend multiple months learning how to re-bench, and that's not fun. No one wants that. We want to get out there and get bigger and stronger. We don't want to deal with having to relearn the basics of what we learned. So implement all these things today in your bench, so you don't have to deal with them tomorrow. Now I'll be doing an honorable mention. Now this is the most important thing. If you do not have this in, don't expect progress, don't expect anything other more than where you're at now, and that is sleep. You probably heard you get good sleep all the time. 7 to 9 hours can make the biggest difference. Recently today, I only got 7 hours, and I could feel the difference in my deadlift session. I could just feel the weight. I could feel it when I was doing shoulder press after. I could just feel it. When you get consistently good sleep, you will notice the difference. So if you need to take a sleep supplement, you need to take magnesium, take, anything you need. ashwagandha, like that helps lower stress, anxiety. You could take that too. Anything that will help you to get better sleep, which can directly correlate to your training. And then the second I'll mention would be, I would definitely say program. Diet's kind of there, but I mean, if you're getting enough protein, the rest of it doesn't really matter. If you're in a surplus, you're going to always be stronger. Deficit, not as much. You could still get strong, but not as easy. But with program, you need to find a program that's right for you. Now, let's say, oh, I only bench 135. Okay, that's okay. So you can just keep progressing until you get to that point where you're like, I am not moving week after week or every few weeks. So what you'll have to do, you either go online, look at people that have some type of credentials. They've trained people, they've trained, they have like coaches. You can go like lift.com, liftingvault.com, you can buy a program there. I've bounced around a few programs. Now the best thing is to get a coach, but is that realistic? No. A lot of people don't want to get a coach. It costs money, costs time, and they're not that serious. They're serious about the lift, but they're not that serious. They don't want to compete. So I get that. So you need to go out there and find the best way to progress yourself. So good sleep, good program, good diet. All honorable mentions. Okay, in the end, no matter where you are at your bench, all these three things will help. No matter if you start doing today, tomorrow, in a week, or you don't start them all. But if you do not do these, your bench will not progress in the way you want to see it. So just make sure you're doing all three things. We can go back over them. Number 3, grip, hand placement. Number 2, back positioning. Number 3, foot positioning, and drive through legs. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Implement all these things, bench will get bigger, things will start going your way. Just remember, sleep, diet, training, exercise. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. See y'all later.